I just don't know. There's just too many storylines to choose from. But this could be the biggest redemption story going on in training camp, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to RGR, and there's a lot of storylines, a lot of them about redemption going on as the Chiefs get ready to go to camp, and it's got me thinking a lot about some of what could be the best one. A lot of players making improvements, coming and joining a new team, not a slight task, so it's got me reeling about it, and I think there's one in particular that stands out to me that we should talk about. If you're new around here, I'm Ryan. This is me going rogue on the NFL and the Kansas City Chiefs. So glad you're here, and it's good to see you. Now, I'm trying to go through positions. I'm trying to go through who can make a difference, who can be an impact guy. And lost in all that are some really, really good stories about players making progress, players, fulfilling dreams and all that kind of stuff. And in a week when we've been distracted by some other things, I want to talk a little bit about one guy that stood out to me, and it's not just about his on-field possibilities in this particular defense, playing for Steve Spagnuolo, but it's about what he's bringing to the team, just as a matter of fact, who he is and what he's doing. And I think that the biggest possible redemption story going right now, as Chiefs get ready for camp, is Darron Lee. I think he's a guy that's got so much potential that he hasn't been able to reach yet, that's really the overriding factor. When you look at how he's been in media appearances, social media, with the Chiefs' official interviews and that kind of thing, he's a guy that's very excited to be in Chiefs Kingdom, and I think that's a really positive sign. He's also a guy that probably isn't going to play a starting role, at least not in the base defense, not right away. It's a lot of transition. But as Steve Spagnuolo gets used to what he has and how he wants to deploy this defense, it comes back to what we talk about in the general trends in the NFL. And that's that more and more pass, more and more three wide receiver sets, more and more having to have linebackers that can play in coverage and aren't the downhill type that are going to come thump you in the hole. You got to have guys that can turn their hips and run with running backs and tight ends, and even an occasional slot receiver, especially if it's on underneath crossing type stuff. You have to be able to identify routes coming through your zone and jump on them. And that's something that plays right into what Darron Lee can be for this particular Chiefs team. Now, there's a lot of hype about Reggie Ragland and Tony Hitchens, and that's who they have deployed right now as their starters in the base defense. And that's all well and good. But even though we don't know how much zone that Steve Spagnuolo wants to play or how much nickel versus dime versus base that he wants to play, we do know one thing, that NFL offenses aren't going to stop throwing the ball. So they have to have a nickel. In fact, I feel like as I look at the way this roster is built right now, and I look and start to think about how some of those cuts are going to come down, and we'll talk about that when we get closer to camp, it makes me realize that there's probably a couple different variations that they're going to try to utilize for the nickel sets. And Darron Lee's got to play into a lot of them. They can go big with Hitchens and Lee. Some speed and a guy that they want to try to play as Will, and we'll talk about that experiment, but I think that's what they're looking for. They can go a little bit smaller, put Dorian O'Daniel in there with Lee, and now you have two speed linebackers that are almost safety size, but have coverage ability and give you a wider gamut of what you can do with them in coverage away from the line of scrimmage. The nice thing about it is they both show some blitz rush capability too, so you're not limited to just drop, drop, drop. And that's going to be important. Disguising this defense is going to be a theme throughout it, not just with the front seven, but the whole way that they go about this defense, especially calling it to try and get mismatches. And Darron Lee is a guy that has enough speed, enough experience because he's been in the league a few years. He's shown a little bit of pass rush, even off the edge while he was in New York. And he's a guy that comes from a huge college program that hasn't been able to live up to the hype yet. Put all that together with a brand new town, a brand new chance, and what I think is going to end up being a fairly specific role. And I think that's a recipe for success. There's other redemption stories on this roster. We'll talk about those as they go along. A lot of guys that I think have the chance to really take a step forward and maybe beyond what we've seen from them ever in their professional careers anyway. But I think right now the most intriguing one to me is Darron Lee, because he could be a starter for some teams. He has been in New York. I think he's going to play mostly a sub, at least to start the season. Injuries and all that will come into play, but he's a guy that will probably not play 60% of the snaps. I'm guessing he'll be a little bit under that. So he can save himself. He can be, as long as he's locked in mentally and understands his assignments and how that defense is, he can kind of let his instincts play out. And I think that's something that he used very well in college that we haven't seen really develop so much in the pros yet. So I'm really intrigued to see what he can do once he's let loose in a defined role in the pass defense. And I really want to see them tweak with him. There's going to be blitzing. We know that that's going to happen because Steve Spagnuolo is making the calls. So I can see a lot of overload blitzing coming from what is the right side of the defense with Jones, Frank, and Tyron kind of scooting in there. But that also leaves room for a little misconception, a little misdirection on the other side. Give them a look and then send a linebacker. And I still feel like linebackers today, if they have enough speed, can still be useful tools in the pass rush and in that intermediate zone where you can kind of play some games with the quarterback. And I'm really excited to see what he can do. Put that together with his enthusiasm and the fact that I think he understands that this is his big chance to kind of turn his career around and pay off on all the things that people said and thought about him coming out of college. This is the guy that I'm going to be watching, especially early in camp, but definitely as the roles get more defined through, say, the second quarter of the season, games 5 through 8. Darron Lee's going to be at the top of my list. And I'll give you an update here after we get through camp and that kind of stuff. But let me know what you think. Is this one of those things that could end up being the redemption story of this training camp, of this season? Or is it just somebody you're not sure about? Because there are question marks, and that's perfectly fine. So that's where I'm at today. I wanted to talk about him a little bit, and I want to know what you guys think. Leave your comments down below. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe and the bell notification. You can set that up however you want so you know when we have new videos or I'm going live or something. And definitely leave your comments below. And lastly, if you like this particular video, leave me a thumbs up. That helps YouTube figure out that you're digging it. So thanks for all your time. Let me know what you think of Darron Lee, and I'll be back with you in a couple days.